Hi, I'm John,
I'm Andrew.
and this is Agree to Disagree. And we just watched The Last Starfighter.
Yes, we did. It was all right. I think we'll get into it, but we summarized everything nicely before. Worked out.
Yeah. So going into it, Andrew, how did you feel about The Last Starfighter?
I am conflicted.
Yes. Before we get into the nitty gritty of it, I want to point out as a reminder that this is a movie that I watched when I was a kid, and Andrew has never seen before. But it kind of falls in that spectrum of movies that kind of permeate through pop culture and have helped influence other things.
Oh man, are you kidding me? I saw that throughout the entire film of just
Yeah.
like, wow, that's actually a really relevant. Actually, I have one specific reference I'm going to harp on when it's there. But obviously, we'll get into that in interesting facts. So, shall we get started here?
Yes.
Excellent. So, I guess should I summarize the movie? I feel like I should summarize the movie now that we've done it correctly.
Yes, that sounds fair.
Okay, so The Last Starfighter, from my general understanding, is a movie where a boy in a trailer park, after trying to get out of there and see the world and realizing that his community needs him for a lot of things, ends up stumbling his way into accidentally becoming what is known as a starfighter, which is a member of the Star League. I'm putting massive air quotes around everything for evidence.
Star League.
So Star League, which is a kind of like the Federation from Star Trek, like a unified conglomerate of like culturally and technologically advanced civilizations that are like all connected in this. Yeah, it's the Federation from Star Trek.
It is a federation of peaceful planets that are separated by a thing that's called like the Great Barrier or something like that.
The Frontier.
The Frontier, I'm sorry. It's basically a whole series of like these orbs floating in space.
Yep.
That separate them from the bad people.
It's a giant gentrified space ball.
Yes, it's a giant it is a giant segregation ball.
It's pretty much, yeah. When you put it that way, it's really fucking terrible. Especially since we technically don't see those guys do anything particularly villainous outside of just occasionally act like assholes.
In fact, the most villainous person was one of their own.
Yeah, which like
Zer.
Side note, when we get to the actual thing, like that's the one thing I really do love by comparison about this to Star Wars is like you actually see stormtroopers just slaughtering people en masse, and you're like, oh yeah, fuck those guys. Like you don't really see that in this movie where it's like, what? Am I just supposed to hate them on principle? Like this seems very racist now that you point it out. Anyway,
right.
So he gets recruited by the Federation. Star League, whatever. It's a lame name. Gets recruited by Star League, and after a lot of arguments with the guy who recruited him, who is actually like kind of a gambling like mentor asshole figure who really comes across as that drunk guy who's trying to sell him off for cash, which like he is.
Well, what he's really doing is, once again, this is the actor who played the Music Man, and this is sort of like an unofficial reprisal of that kind of role, the snake oil salesman.
It actually kind of works.
Yeah.
Anyway, after, what was his name? Centauri? Yeah, yes. Centauri. Centauri sells the kid to Star League, and the kid realizes what the stakes are and is like, no, fuck all of this. That man's head just blew up on a television. I am not having any of this. Leaves, fucks off back to Earth after getting in an argument with Beta, who's basically a robot version of him who is meant to replace him. Ends up going back to Star League, only to find out the Starfighter base has been blown up. Gets the Last Starfighter and becomes the Last Starfighter. Actually, it's called what are they? They're like I can't remember the name of the fighter offhand.
Let's just call it Gunship.
Oh, it was it Gunstar? It was Gunstar.
Yes.
Thank you. That actually worked out. After getting the last Gunstar, becomes the Last Starfighter, and the rest of the movie is kind of just spent dicking around in space, him slowly coming to understand his role as a starfighter
with his quirky sidekick.
Yeah, because apparently we need 2 quirky sidekicks in this movie. And then quirky sidekick number 3 spends his entire time on Earth learning human emotions. And it's actually pretty fantastic. I don't know. I'm conflicted, but I kind of enjoyed it. It was a good cheesy 80s romp.
Yeah, and that's my major takeaway from it is like there are some outmoded ideas in the movie.
Okay. And we'll get into that obviously.
But I still really liked this movie.
It was really enjoyable.
It was cheesy. It was the CG obviously does not hold.
Oh God, no! But we'll get into that.
It did have a few moments at the beginning that were right, And also,
I actually like the character establishment. I think it worked really well. I think he seemed like a very knight, and he seemed very Arthurian sort of figure of like, I just stumbled my way into greatness. And they make the joke about that where he's like, oh, is this another Excalibur test Centauri? Which was like, that was actually clever. I like that.
Yeah. You're doing that Excalibur testing. And also the guy who ends up becoming like, spoiler alert, I guess. The guy who...
They're listening to the show.
The person who ends up betraying the Star League with like the space C4, and is the guy that Centauri
C4. Can we just put space in front of everything?
Yes.
No. We have to put star in front of everything.
The
Star C4. Yeah.
The Star C4. Is the guy that Centauri was getting a payout from. It's like they had a bet where they were like gambling that the arcade game initiative would work or not.
Yeah, that was which, by the way, for something so specific as the 80s, actually weirdly comes across as kind of timeless, and I'm mostly okay with that. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just because video game culture has become so embedded in modern society, but it didn't come across as dated in that regard. There are so many other reasons this movie comes across as dated, but the idea of like mastering our arcade machine actually is kind of cool. Like, also, it's become pretty common in pop culture.
That arcade game, I would totally play the crap
Oh hell yeah!
That game was awesome.
The effects were sweet. It looked like an old school rail shooter.
Yeah.
But like with way more, because he was actually like flying the damn thing, and that's why it was weird to be like, is this a rail shooter? Are you able to move in 3D? What the hell's going on?
I think the impression was that he wasn't flying it; he was like controlling the gunner position,
which makes sense considering the way the Gunstar worked, where you have one person navigation and then you have him as the actual gunner.
Yes.
Which, I don't know, I was actually kind of upset about that. When I hear Starfighter, I don't imagine, like, the gunner on a B-52. I imagine the dude flying the B-52.
No, that guy's a star flyer.
Apparently. God, we just gotta put star in front of everything. Side note, one awesome reference that this is how weird the effect of this movie is. We talked the last episode about how important in nerd culture this movie is, where it's like influenced Ready Player One. Mm-hmm. It's like referenced throughout a lot of different things, and especially back during the early 2000s reviewer boom. I heard the soundtrack and I was like, oh shit, that's the Last Starfighter? Like, there were so many people back during that reviewer boom that just used that music all the damn time. And I'm like, I finally get it. That's awesome. But my main one, and my most recent one, the last attack he uses is called Death Blossom.
Yes.
That is the ultimate attack of Reaper in Overwatch. And I never caught that, but the way he attacks and the motions he uses, comparatively to the actual Death Blossom attack from the Gunstar at the end of the movie, are directly correlated.
Oh, really?
I did not realize that. You know why like Reaper's shotguns move in those motions? Oh. It's because the Death Blossom moves in that motion, and his ultimate is called Death Blossom.
Okay.
Which is insane to me, that like this movie can cause a reference 32 years later, there's a programmer who's like, we're calling it Death Blossom. Why? I don't know. Last Starfighter. Fuck you.
No, the way that works is there's some guys like, we're calling it Death Blossom, and someone's like, why? And then his manager's like, because Death Blossom is awesome. That's why.
That's why. And it's such a cool reference.
High five.
Yeah.
And then there's a freeze frame.
Yeah. 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 And then happy music. Yeah. And then like overly happy like 80s music is playing the entire time. No, yeah, but like there's a random reference that I never would have caught if it wasn't for this movie of like, oh, holy shit, that's why his arms literally move the way they do, and he goes in that spinning motion. It's because this movie.
So the thing that immediately differentiates this movie from, say, like a Star Wars or Star Trek kind of thing is we need to finish the synopsis of the movie.
Oh yeah, and so after Beta starts dealing with stuff on Earth and figures out, oh shit, there are hitmen who are hunting him, manages to track down a guy who is about to tell the entirety of oh god, I can't remember their names right now. The Zur and the Empire outside of the frontier.
Let's just call them like bad scab dudes.
Yeah, those guys. He's going to tell all of them, hey, there is one last Starfighter left, and he is about to attack you. Beta sacrifices himself and crashes the truck that he's driving into that guy to kill him, to make sure that he doesn't get his info out. And then at that point, the main character, Alex, right?
Yes.
Alex and his partner, good scab guy, attack the fleet, successfully take them all
Oh,
down.
you mean brown turtle?
I mean brown turtle. Take them all down, and basically that's the end of the movie. Then they have some very definite sequel bait. Oh my god, is there sequel bait?
Xur got away. Okay, so
then the final moments basically become Star Wars, where it's like, by the way, medals. Okay, moving on.
Yeah. What you didn't cover in your synopsis was that the setup for this fight, the setup for this war, is that the leader of the free, peaceful, gentrified colonies, his son has defected to the evil side.
Yeah, Xur of the planet Rylos?
Yes.
Yeah,
so
okay, cool.
it's a race of people that are all bald on top, and they all kind of look like the elder people from the Green Lantern
Side
series.
note, the design is fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Like, that was really bothersome. That was so dumb.
So Xur has defected from his father, and he was cast out to the Outer Lands, and somehow has come into play with these villainous creatures that are like scabby Borg people.
Yeah. I'm gonna actually look up their names, but keep talking.
And like it's obvious this thing where they're using him to get into the sphere.
I mean, they even state that at the beginning, where it's like,
they're just putting up with a buffoon, essentially, an evil buffoon.
Well, because they state
guy's like a Gargamel kind of character.
Kind of. They state that during the movie, where they're like, how much longer do we have to put up with this fool?
Dude, the dude is like he's like your typical Gargamel, Rita Repulsa, Lord Zed kind of like I'm surrounded by idiots, but you're actually the biggest idiot.
Oh, Kodan.
Oh, Kodan.
Kodan.
Yes.
K-O-D-A-N.
Oh, of course.
Kodan.
If you want to make something sound dangerous and foreign, you put a hyphen in it.
I mean, that or apostrophes. I mean, welcome to Star Trek naming logic. What do we do? Just put some apostrophes. But no, I guess thoughts here. Just okay. I like it. It's a good movie. My God, those effects. Like, I'm sorry to be that guy, because I, like, actively play 8-bit and 16-bit games throughout. Like, I can get over, like, really bad-looking graphics. Holy shit. This movie is like, what if I just booted up Myst and then hit my computer with a hammer a couple of times? Like, it looks... And the thing is, it looks kind of charming. Like, it's still very 80s and, like, early 80s CG, so it's like, it's the originator, so it's charming.
To compare it to, say, Final Fantasy Spirits Within.
Yeah.
As I mentioned before, Final Fantasy Spirits Within was rendered out by a whole huge render farm of computers.
Which they paid way too much money for.
Yes. Whereas this movie, it was all essentially rendered out on one small supercomputer that they had in their studio. Yeah. Huh. They hired a small effects team, and then they paid for this really expensive computer to render it out.
Okay.
And so it's like, it was kind of like how... When you don't have any other examples of how to do it, it's like, let's start off this way. It's a very small step to what now influences the way that we do movies today. And it doesn't, a lot of the effect shots, they don't look good at all.
No.
It worked for the video game scenes. It doesn't work for all the flying through space stuff. It doesn't work for any of that. But I have to give it a pass only because this is in an era where... to do 3D modeling, you essentially had to plunk in each vector coordinate for every single point. And
so to me, I will obviously defend it, being that it's early enough and it looks terrible enough where the rest of the movie's good enough where I'm willing to be like, it's charming, whatever.
You know, all of those effect shots are isolated enough. I wonder if you could get a group of fans together.
I was actually going to suggest this. So my thing was either redo it, or the other thing I was wondering is, I actually ended up doing this because there are obvious comparisons. Star Wars, stylistically, story-wise, all that stuff. And I was looking into it and was wondering, okay, so Star Wars at the time in 1977 had about $11 million. I did the inflation calculation. For this movie, according to 1977 money, they had about $8.75 billion. How much of that do you think was spent on the effects?
A significant chunk of it.
Damn it. Because my other logic would have been,
hard.
Imagine this movie with actual practical effects. Like, you would have actually had a timeless classic if you would have done it that way.
Well, the thing is,
which is slightly infuriating.
I don't have my notes with me, but from what I understand, from what I know about this movie or have heard about this movie over the years, was that they specifically wanted to do CG to differentiate themselves from Star Wars.
But here's the thing: I would have been fine with it, I get their comparison of like we don't want to be unoriginal. But as a quote from one of my friends is the only people who worry about originality are the people who are in the process of creating it. No one actually cares that much about like except for critics like. Most people will go watch another thing if it resembles a different version of another thing that they enjoy. Like, imagine this with way different practical effects that would have made, I don't know, that scene to the Starfighter base way more visible, way more, decent to look at. Or the other problem with this was that the CG seriously takes away the scale of everything.
Oh, it took away the scale. And also, you brought up the approach to the Starfighter base. It looks bad, obviously. We're talking like things that look more primitive than Reboot.
And it's supposed to look impressive, and it's kind of funny for looking back it's 33 years later, like, this is awful.
It's a weird, like, wrinkle flesh, like, giant raisin rock.
Yeah!
With a metal gray beam thing
across with like a single ring on a mountain. Yeah. Like, it looks like, comparatively, just imagine that comparatively to the Death Star the first time you see it. Yeah. It's a big deal to see the Death Star.
So for all of the things that like got changed over the years with Star Wars, the Death Star still looks great. They didn't change that much at all.
And that was ILM basically just being wizards.
Yeah, it's just the model shots in Star Wars still hold up today.
And I will say this, watching the special edition versus the new one, especially recently because of this show, I can openly admit there are certain scenes in the trench run where I'm like, that looks fucking terrible.
But in comparison...
Oh, this looks just so mind-bogglingly awful. Everything looks like a pixel. Like,
this movie, the graphics in this movie, and part of this has to do with the escalation of graphics quality and fidelity, but by the time I was a child, like in the early 90s...
This looked awful.
You could recreate this in real time in a DOS game.
Yeah.
Like, we get X-Wing.
We could get bored and drunk and probably still program a game that looks better than this, and we don't program.
But the thing I was going to bring up was that you have that base, that visual of the base, and then when they go back and it's supposed to be blown up, it is the crappiest looking blown up model.
There's no fire, there's no scorch marks, it's just a hole.
It's just they have and it's sealed up too. It's sealed up by like a solid plane that's gray, so it looks like you just took a model and you chopped a chunk out of it and then sealed up the ends.
It looks so bad.
Oh man, it looks
and combine
awful.
That with like what the Kodan fleet is supposed to look like, of like this big threatening. It's like 20 ships.
I will say that the shots of Centauri's car when it's flying, those are pretty okay.
Well, initially they look kind of cool.
Yeah.
Also
the
because
later one's not so good.
Well, also because the thing clearly started out as an actual practical effect that they built, and then as it starts launching, that's where things start looking bad. And I remember that note being written down as I was watching the movie where I'm like, and here we go. Of just the second the jets kick in, it goes from practical effect to CG, and you're just like, oh, this looks terrible.
So I've got a few notes that I want to go through. Just things that I noticed and that I wanted to point out. When you have all these starfighters there for their like orientation meeting, they're literally,
welcome to war.
Yeah, no,
your bunks over there. Look at the person on your left. Look at the person on your right. Both of them will probably die.
In this case, all of them died.
All of them died
because they were all in the hangar. Anyway,
whatever.
So the thing that really bugged me, and I understand this actually kind of makes it more realistic, but you don't want that in your sci-fi movie necessarily.
Yeah.
They're all sitting on wheelie roller office chairs when they're doing
I didn't even notice that.
They're sitting in high-backed office chairs that like have the 5-spoke wheels on the bottom. And it's just like, all right, good to know that across space and
the 5-wheeled office chair. It's still a thing. It's the most
universal.
It's the most efficient design. Evolution demands those chairs.
Oh, it's a star chair.
Yeah, it's star chair. We got to keep doing this. This has to be the gag now. But I don't know. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's still a charming movie. I still liked a lot of it. It's just, I guess the frustration to me was that so much of the budget was clearly spent on those effects. When, like, looking through, there were some rewrites that could have been done. There were some characterization moments that could have been fleshed out better. If you had done practical effects, maybe you would have been able to hire more editors or more writers.
So some of the best parts of this movie, though, are the dialogue.
I actually really liked the dialogue. It was very natural.
There's some really good pull quotes, like there's
relatively.
one from Centauri where he says, if that's what you think, then that's all you'll ever be. And it's like, damn, like that strikes straight to the core. Like, because this is Alex arguing about how he's just a kid from wherever and he needs to go home. This is insane.
Which, by the way, despite the fact that at the beginning of the movie he is talking about leaving this place and like living a new life, would be the rational reaction to, by the way, welcome to interstellar space war. Like, I didn't mean this. I did not mean this.
I wanted to go to a nice college. I didn't plan on being a hero of a people.
I did not think this was gonna fucking happen. Which I will say was one thing that is actually lacking from Star Wars of no, fuck you, this is ridiculous. And that was an awesome moment from Alex to be like, I just wanted to go to a better college. I didn't want to be here. And it's a fantastic reaction from a character standpoint. I actually really like that. Of how just reluctant he is, of just like, oh god, why?
I'd also like to point out that Centauri, although he doesn't actually die, the scene where you think he's dead, his dying words were, he says, "It never hurts to be rich." Those are his last words.
It's a hell of a way to die.
Because they're like lying down, they're like, piles of money.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I will say one moment that I did hate was the fact that the piles of money thing was clearly said understanding that Centauri was dying. And then Alex is somehow shocked when Centauri dies and like repeats his name about, I think I counted 5 times, when really 2 would have sufficed. I'm like, okay, movie, now you're getting, this kid might just be dumb. I don't really know.
So then Scab Turtle.
Yeah, Scab Turtle, which is all we're calling him. It's O'Hurley, right?
I don't know.
I think it's like Daniel O'Hurley or something like that. Like, it's an actual actor in like the B-movie sci-fi circuit. I don't remember.
I don't know. But he says to him, "I'll see you in the next dimension," which then he fleshes out later on when he also says death is a primitive concept.
Yeah, which I actually
that
like.
Shit was great.
Yeah, no, that especially for a thing that's supposed to be advances like Star League or even the Federation, where it's like, do we really die? Like, we're under the assumption that you're probably not dead. Which, I mean, that fits. It fits character and culturally. Yeah, I liked it.
So there's also some of the things that I take umbrage with. There is a moment in the movie where when Alex is getting pumped and he's about ready to like fulfill his destiny, let's put it.
Sure.
There's an insert shot of his girlfriend saying, "I love you." And it's like, why the fuck is this shot in there?
Yeah, no, that was really random and took
jarring.
Me completely out of what the hell was going on.
You know what I'm talking
about.
No,
I know exactly what you're talking about because it bugged the shit out of me too, where I'm like, why is that there?
Like, are you saying, like, maybe this is something they could have fleshed out if they did more movies, but maybe it could be that they actually have some sort of weird psycho-mental connection.
That would have been cool, but that didn't happen.
But that didn't happen. That is all pure conjecture.
That was really bizarre.
Another side note, there's a moment where when Alex is first at the base, there's a prolonged scene where they're in front of this like beam machine thingy that's got laser beams long tubes. That is the same device that gets used afterwards in Star Trek The Next Generation.
No, yeah.
In like a million freaking episodes. It's the same one.
No, it's just kind of there, which makes the fact that Star League is the Federation like even more of a conspiracy theory in my brain.
Like, I'm thinking, like, if you want a fan gush, we can say that they're in the same universe. But what I really want to say is that this movie
Kodan are actually just Klingons.
Well, I mean, this movie was made by Universal, but Universal and Paramount are sort of lovey-dovey with each other. So it would not surprise me if this was just something that they picked up on the cheap that was like on some sort of chopping block.
Oh, I'm left to assume that like, because I mean, you run into this all the time where like props end up getting weirdly reused in other stuff.
Yeah,
like the Ghostbusters thing is actually like a shoe buffer. And it's like, all right, whatever. Like people make weird props out of stuff, but like, yeah, I'm pretty sure they probably sold it, and then Star Trek just picked it up. It's a random spacey looking thing.
That prop had a long and illustrious life.
Yeah, it lived pretty well.
Not bad for a foreground out of focus object.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I actually wonder what the hell that thing is besides something that's just meant to look cool.
I think that's all it is.
Is it just like a weird lamp?
Okay, so I have 2 more things I want to say.
Sure.
Oh, 3 more things.
All right.
There is the shitty ass display that Alex has to use as a gunner,
Oh,
which
yeah,
you
that
can
one.
only see if you look directly at it.
Yeah, who the hell decided that was a
Hey,
good idea?
You know, I understand this was made in the early mid '80s,
And
but
you couldn't afford the damn.
No. In early mid '80s, they didn't understand what view angle meant.
Oh yeah.
That's a more modern concept. Anyone will tell you that like view angle is important.
Yeah.
And that is a more modern ergonomic concept that we use in electronics today. If you have a laptop and it has a shitty ass viewing angle, you might not buy that laptop specifically because of that.
Because you can't see it all the time at the correct. That is so dumb. Now that I think about it, that is one of those weird '80s concepts. It's just like thoroughly in this movie
Like,
that you look back like that's stupid.
It's something that's meant to sound cool or futuristic, but no. That's a terrible design.
It's just highly ineffective.
It's like, so I can only be an effective gunner if I'm looking directly at my view screen? What?
Yeah, that takes out the entire idea of peripheral vision and essentially removes a gunner from, because like a gunner effectively you need to be able to see everything around you. If you put horse blinders on him, you're gonna get shot from the side that you can't see.
This display isn't gonna work if you go outside your fovea.
Yeah, that's so dumb. No, that bugged me too. I completely agree.
I also got as another thing, Death Blossom. The way that they describe it, have you ever read Ender's Game?
Yes.
They kind of describe it like the molecular disruption device, the MD device.
Oh yeah.
Because it's sort of like this is a last ditch thing. Only use it if you're 100% sure, and like
right.
It held some parallels with me. But then that was what I wrote down before it actually happened. And this is my last point. When it actually happens, they took that 3D model and they just spun it on it.
Oh no, yeah, it looked terrible.
They took a 3D model and they just spun it erratically around its axis.
It looked like
its pivot point.
It looked like someone had a set of like puppet strings and was just like whatever, it's moving, it's fine. It looked so bad.
Was so dumb.
Hey, but somebody really liked, some Overwatch designer really liked it.
My note specifically says, spin that 3D model, yo.
That was all they did. Let's spin the 3D model and just have it shoot shit. It's fine.
Also, what were the names of the enemy race?
Kodan.
I loved that final line when it's like, what do we do? And then the hero, the guy with the visor, the guy with the lens, the amber lens. That
the scouter, the scouter.
He goes, dude, and the lens pops out. He goes, we die.
That was so. I hated that line.
I love that line. It was a thing where it's like, you know, these guys, they're the bad guys, but at the same time, it's like they're not doing a Grand Moff Tarkin kind of like. Escape in our moment of triumph?
Like, they fully understand they're screwed.
Like, no, we're screwed. What do we do? We're gonna die, son.
Admittedly, you know that wasn't their entire fleet, and I think I can see kind of where that was going with potential sequels, where it's like, that was just a single command ship, and like next time it's gonna be like 40 of them. And because they can only get through the frontier for so long, but that's where the whole...
And it took them like a solid day to dig a hole through the frontier.
Oh, I had a feeling it took longer than that. I had a feeling they were like slowly sitting there just like digging a tiny little hole so their command ship could fit through.
You know, okay, Star League, you could have just flown like a ship out there and just shot like a missile.
I was going to say I think one of the things that bugged me with the most was the sheer complete ineffectiveness of Star League. They lose one base and they're like, well, we're fucked.
No wonder they think Alex is amazing.
Yeah, like their military is made up of one guy. Like, okay, sorry, their military was made up of one base and like maybe 1,000 employees. Maybe. Like, that's it. That is their secret special, oh no, we're gonna get you code. Like, that's their main military base.
The weird thing about that is they sell it like it's so prestigious.
Well, and also it looks like ass thanks to the computer effects, which, like, that's not helping.
Well, all the stuff inside the base.
Like, that looked great.
I was fine
Why
with
couldn't
that.
I have had that for the entire base?
Oh, because CG, it was not good enough to do the thing they wanted them to do at that point.
Could have done practical. Could have given me a Death Star, you guys. Could have given me an entire military planet, but no.
There's a very good reason why Disney, the biggest pocketbook in Hollywood,
yep.
When they did Tron, did a blend of CG and practical.
Because you need it, otherwise the movie doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
And those moments with, like, when you're approaching, they're supposed to be these majestic, oh my god, we're going to the Starfighter base, just look terrible.
Oh, yeah.
And I have to imagine, even at the time, because did Tron come out before or after this?
I believe Tron came out before.
I have to imagine that after seeing Tron...
Because Tron gets referenced in a lot of the things that people talk about when they talk about the movie.
Okay.
So...
Because I was going to say, seeing Tron and then seeing this, I still would have thought this looked bad. Like,
oh, yeah.
By comparison, it just doesn't hold up. The practical effects, when they're actually, like, in the base... or when they're wandering around, like the guy who did the set design for the trailer park, that was great. The guy who did the set design for the actual Starfighter base, that looks great. I even like the Kodan ships.
So can I talk for a moment about how Alex is a shitty boyfriend?
I mean, was that not obvious? That really, I mean, go for it.
Well,
I'm not about to stop you.
This is for the people who might be listening to this podcast and haven't watched the movie, which, by the way, you should really watch the movie.
Yeah, typically when we're talking about something, our general suggestion is watch it before you listen to the second part, because you'll just get more enjoyment out of it.
So at the very beginning, or at the beginning of the movie, when Alex wasn't able to go to the lake with his friends and all that shit.
Yeah, which, like, that was actually a nice touch of, like, providing character arc, and I like that.
There is an obvious point that's being made, which is Alex is sort of like have you ever fixed the internet for your grandparents?
Imagine doing that constantly.
Yeah, that is Alex. Alex is like the official, unofficial maintenance person for this entire mobile home community.
Which I like that from a character standpoint.
Yeah,
that was actually a really good establishment, and I like them as a character.
But then when his girlfriend comes back at the end of the day, and she's like, "Hey, man, how come you didn't come out?" And he's like, "Well, what do you think?" And then she was like, "Oh, well, you know, I'm sorry." And he was like, "So why'd that guy drive you home, huh?" In
his defense, I took that more as a playful angle. Like, I didn't think he was being a dick.
She plays it off very well. For me, maybe I'm overly sensitive to this kind of shit.
Potentially.
But the thing is,
I could totally be wrong.
I took the note, Alex is a dick to his girlfriend, and then I crossed it out because it plays off better at the end of that exchange.
Right, and that's why I think that kind of helps.
The setup for the exchange, though, was really...
it felt like...
maybe I don't know enough about their personalities.
Well, it felt like an inside joke that you weren't in on, and then when you were in on it at the end, you're like, oh, that's actually kind of funny. Right. But at the beginning, you're not in on it, so it's a little bit awkward and weird to, watch.
But then and here's the thing, it's like, at the end of the movie, he's like, come with me to space, randomly. And
in his defense, he is the only human out there.
That is fair. But at the same time, she's like, I don't know, and like, maybe this is a failing on the movie's point, the way the movie's structured.
Yeah.
But I never get a good sense for where she stood. So it was kind of like she just exists to be like, well, I don't want to leave because Granny, and it felt like a weak statement. It's like, well, and on top of that, I was like, hey, I'm going to go to college and I'll find an apartment and you can come and live with me while I'm at college. And it's like,
actually, I think he stated in part of that they were going to try and get into the same place.
It was never. Was
that never communicated?
No. Huh. It was more of, I'm going to college.
Maybe I filled in those gaps.
Like, I'm going to college, and you're going to come live into my apartment with me.
See, I naturally just filled in the gap of like, oh, they'll just go to the same place. But then again, that could be me talking for the movie where that didn't actually happen.
That is one of my weird sticking points about, like, this is a product of the age of the movie.
Oh, totally. Like, that's the one frustration in anything where it does feel a little bit more ageless comparatively to especially other 80s movies. Like even Back to the Future shows its age pretty bad. Yeah.
Although I will say the effects of Back to the Future are way better. A movie that came out the same year.
Not even comparable.
Or a year later.
Well, no, practical. But the main thing of like those
and ILM.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But some of those jokes in like Back to the Future, or some of those things in Back to the Future culture really don't stick. Like the fact that everybody was wearing vests, or the skateboarding, which is kind of completely fallen by the wayside culturally, or just like other dumb things that you're like, why is that? All right, whatever, fucking 80s. And I will say, because of the separation to the trailer park, the movie doesn't really harp on some of that stuff. The really only 80s the only real thing that hammers it into the 80s is the arcade cabinet. Well, that and the effects, but I mean, in the movie.
So I've got one last point I want to make about this movie. Something that really bugged me. So they do this cool thing where when Alex shows up at the base, he can't understand anybody until they stick the Babelfish chip on his collar, and then suddenly he's able to understand everybody. Okay, fine, that works. At the very end of the movie, they land back down at the trailer park, and Scab Turtle is able to communicate with all of the residents of the trailer park. What the actual fuck?
See, my sticking point on this one was the initial, well, why the fuck didn't you just do that in the first place? You had this random kid just wandering around your goddamn ship, just like, what is happening?
They're doing the film trope fish out of water.
Which is fine, but like shove a babelfish in his ear or something. Do it immediately. That's what they did in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
So that's something that Ford Prefect got down immediately.
Where he's like,
oh, you're confused. Here you go.
Fuck, here, take this fish. God. Oh, wait, I can hear everything now.
Oh, wow. Oh,
that's actually very helpful.
Wow, thank you.
I also still do love the quote in that book series about how it's actually caused more wars now that everybody can understand each other and understand how insulting they've been to each other. It's like, oh, shit, fuck that guy. Other side note, and this is a quick note before we actually wrap up the episode. Audience, do you realize how little we've talked about the main villain?
What, Zur?
Yeah, the guy who shows up for 5 minutes.
Zur is the least important part of it. Zur is a bratty
child. They play him off as like this big threat. Oh, Empire Strikes Back. He's coming. He's gonna kill you. It's like he's there and gone. It's just like an asshole who had a scepter and threatened to stab some people and then fucked off.
Here's the thing. Zur is a child, and the movie knows he's a child. They pointed out multiple times by the people who were actually the villains.
He's proto-space Joffrey Baratheon.
And then he's just like, oh, I understand you have a scepter just like mine. And they're like, it's not the scepter that makes the ruler. And it's like, fuck yeah. The villains are actually... I side with the villains much on this.
I like that they were kind of using him in that angle, but I hate that he's played off as the threatening one of like, oh, he shot out of an escape pod. He's coming back for his revenge. Yeah,
like, oh, he escaped. Yeah, so?
Yeah, it's just like, who the fuck cares about that guy? He was a joke anyway.
You know what a good version of that character is?
What?
Loki.
Yes.
Loki is a good version of that character.
Where he's being used by in the Avengers.
Also had a scepter.
I wonder if that actually led... this movie probably has weird design things that kind of bled it. It's one of those movies that, I mean, they talk about this all the time, especially with, like, music, where it's, like, this one really fucking obscure band that actually changed the way all music worked. It'd be like the Sonics for Seattle or something like that.
Or, like, if you want to talk about, like, influence in rock culture, you have... the Ramones, who are a pretty well-known band. Yeah. But then you also have the Replacements. Yeah. And the Replacements, if you haven't listened to the Replacements...
I have no idea who that is.
You need to listen to the Replacements. They influenced probably about 80% of popular rock and roll.
Or like, I mean, even one of my favorite authors in the fantasy world of Roger Zelazny, of like how he just randomly influenced Martin and then a bunch of the, Martin and then, God, who's the guy who wrote Terry Pratchett.
Yes.
Of like how he was in direct communication with some of these guys and served as one of their mentors, at least for Martin.
Right.
And it's like weird how you can trace these pop culture threads back to their original starting point and be like, how the fuck are they not heard of? And that's what Last Starfighter is to me, especially watching it. It's this weird cultural time capsule of something that once you crack it open, you realize all the references that are being made in pop culture of like even stuff as small as the Death Blossom and Overwatch, where it's like, oh shit, I never would have known that. But that is someone who saw Last Starfighter, thought that was awesome, and turned it into a move for an Overwatch character. And that's like the most minor thing. I can't imagine what the really major ones are.
So overarching, just if you had to make a judgment on this film, hang on. If you want to make a judgment on this film, and for people who might be listening to this podcast who have not watched the movie yet, do you think they should watch it?
Yeah. I as someone who watched it earlier today, I, first of all, genuinely enjoyed it. I found the writing to be pretty good. The effects are terrible, but I mean, I kind of knew that was going to happen. Mm-hmm. The writing's good. The plot's stock, but it's stock handled well, where it's not very serious about itself, and it's charming and adventurous, and it's got a lighthearted tone. It never gets dark or anything. It's pretty light on the scale. It's what if Star Wars was made in the 80s with the raw CGI, essentially. It's a decent enough movie. I'd watch it. And just for that aspect of being able to look back at like cultural touchstones and realize a lot of where things are pulled from, it's cool from that like encyclopedic aspect. You're like, oh, that's where this came from. That's really interesting. So I don't know. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I still stand by the idea that this is a movie people should watch. And it is kind of in a lot of ways, yeah, the CGI doesn't hold up. But would you expect it to? It's 1984. They would have done better with practical effects because there's a lot of movies that came out around that same era.
I mean, hell, I'd argue Tron still doesn't hold up.
Well, I mean, like let's look at a movie that came out in 1984, Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
No one can argue that the effects in an Indiana Jones movie don't hold up.
Yeah. And that's I mean, that's just using like models and other stuff. I actually wonder, I'm gonna look this up on our final note for the movie. So when I did the math, I figured out how much
it was in today's money.
Yeah, so Temple of Doom, I wonder what the budget was on that. And obviously we can talk about how much of that was used as effects. Let's see here. Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom. It had a budget of $282 million. Completely scratched my entire point about practical effects being
on the flip
cheaper.
side, The Last Starfighter did pretty good for a $15 million budget.
They
film.
made 13 mil back.
Yeah,
which is, I mean, not nearly as good as they wanted, obviously. But I mean, 15 million. That's what 2.5 short of what Star Wars had. You could have done it.
Yeah.
They hired enough B-level actors. They could have pulled this off.
Anyway, so this is normally where we would sit down and during the wrap-up we would mention what we're going to do next.
Yeah.
We're going to kind of leave this one open because we have something that might happen, but it also might not.
Yes.
So we're going to leave that open and we'll get back to you next time.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.